joined by elite CrossFit coach Matt Torres. Matt, thanks so much for joining me, man.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. I'm excited,
Yeah,
Micah.
me too. Speaking of exciting, first of all, I was stalking you on Instagram as I prepared for this. I hope that's okay. And I can't wait to get into some of that because you have a breadth of information on your Instagram page. And it's saying you're a CrossFit coach is almost like putting you in somewhat of a box because I realize just how much, almost like a thought leader that you are about, a lot of things. I can't wait to get into that. But what is sexy and what probably people want to hear about first is the fact that you are a coach to some of the most, talented up and coming teenagers in the sport. How did that happen, man? I mean, oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. It was something that we're at a boot camp in Utah. I want to say like maybe 3 years ago, and Matty Bruce was like, "Hey, man, I want to introduce you to this dude, Dallin." I think at that time Dallin was like 15 years old. He was like, he's going to be a really great CrossFit athlete. He's a really good human as well, and I think he'd be a great fit for him. And then, so that weekend, Dal and I just chatted for a little bit. We got them all squared away and set up. And that was actually like my introduction into coaching these teens. And I was really fortunate and lucky enough to be introduced to Dallin, because he ended up doing very well. But, that right there was like, okay, let me get you another teen, and then let me get you another teen, and then let me get you. And the next thing I knew, I had like, 10 teenagers, all, all wanting to achieve the same goal of winning the CrossFit Games. These weren't teenagers that were like, I just want to do really well in the open. Because I had a handful of athletes that also, they just wanted to do well in the open. So, that's kind of how the teen journey started 3 years ago. And now we're here and we're phasing from teenagers to a professional.
It's insane. I obviously had the pleasure of talking with Dallin here a few episodes back, and he is one of not only the brightest people that I've had the pleasure of speaking with, but also incredibly mature and wise beyond his years. I'm sure you would probably concur.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I really think it's because of CrossFit that these teenagers are like this. The what they gain when they start doing CrossFit as a teen is like, okay, this is number one. First and foremost is if I fail, I'm learning, right? And I think Nick mentioned that one time. And they gain that from really early age, so they're not afraid of it. And it's like that right there is something that we don't really pick up and learn as children playing normal sports. If you're a gifted athlete, if you're quick, if you can jump, you can usually get by for many, many years up until college when everyone is just as gifted as you are. And then that's where it's like,
Wow.
okay, what do I do now? I've never learned this like adversity of not doing well all of the time. And I think that's kind of what starts it off with Dallin and even with the rest of the teams as well is, they understand that they're not going to go out and win every single practice. They're not going to go out and win every single training session. And sometimes they're not going to go out and win every single competition.
So it sounds like because you kind of had success, or you and Dallin together had success, and then from there, as you started to get other athletes that just happened to be teenagers, I mean, what was the secret sauce? Obviously, these kids have to be talented. Obviously, that's a given. But how are you developing these athletes, quite frankly, into champions? I mean, it's like every person you've touched, it's like it's turned into gold. I mean, what do you attribute that to?
Yeah. typically every teen reaches out for the same reasons, and this is kind of what it is I need to get stronger, right? And it's like, well, I mean, you're 15 years old, like you're gonna get stronger, but you know, there's that portion where it's like, you know, get me strong, of which I think working with teenagers is very simple to get them strong. Um, Especially because a lot of them are already aerobically like well developed, right? They've been doing CrossFit for 2 or 3 years, and that's what they do. They go inside and you know their gym, and they do really really great in these workouts. So that's step number one is we need to get them strong, and for boys, it plays a big factor. For the girls, on the other hand, it's like it's not until they really become, you know, until they age up, until they go into the individual, is when their strength starts to really come around. So really, that's first and foremost. Another thing is, you know, when it comes to building a CrossFit athlete, they really, you know, they have to be good at a lot of things, at practically everything. So when it comes to assessing the athletes and throughout the year's program, it's really looking at the program, seeing if it's working for them, and making those adjustments on the fly. And sometimes those adjustments can be made week to week. Sometimes they're made month to month. But it's always a thought of, okay, have they gotten a step closer? And I'll tell you what, for teen athletes, you know, if there's a coach out there listening, develop their posterior chain, you know, because they're already great movers already. And so you see excellent movement, but they're very anterior developed. You know, so that right there is like one of the golden tickets for getting a teenager strong, is develop them, you know, their posterior chain a little bit more, spend a little bit more time there. You know, you don't have to be doing, you know, a bajillion different things every single day. I'm not trying to win every single day by programming everything under the sun. You know, just pick two things that they really need to work on, and it starts to come together.
That's incredible. I mean, it really is. We've obviously talked a lot about Dallin, and then you've got you know, Emma Cary as well, that had an incredible showing at Granite Games, and would love to get into a little bit of that. But you mentioned something earlier about, you know, it's strength isn't really a major factor for the females until they age up into that individual category, where, you know, they're competing with you know, all of the big girls, right? And so they're all lifting major weight. I mean, it's incredible because you've seen so many teenage athletes either phase out of the sport because of burnout, and or they simply don't have what it takes. It's such a big jump to go to that individual level and not just participate, but compete, because we know there's a difference there. And Emma seems like she's had, I mean, obviously it's, you know, it's outside looking in here, but zero problems with that. It's like she snatches 200. I mean, it's unbelievable. And I've seen so many videos of her just crushing it. And there's guys that aren't even, you know, hitting that, you know, and it's incredible. Like, what do you attribute that to? That's phenomenal.
Yeah. Well, you know what's funny is, you know, Emma and I talk about it all the time. I always forget what her snatch was when we first started. And let's see, this was 2019 when we started working together. And, you know, to this day, every time in the last like 3 months, every time she's touched a bar, it's another PR. And, you know, obviously that's not normal. It doesn't happen all the time, but it's happening at the right time. You know, it happened just before, like a week or two before Granite Games. And then it happened again at Granite Games. And, you know, what I was most proud about, since we're talking about that snatch, is she was in the back and she had no misses, and she came out in the front in front of people and she had no misses. And that was probably what I was most ecstatic about, is just getting that confidence. Really, it's like, you know, anyone can do that in training. They have no pressure, you know, they have their favorite song on, they're like in a very comfortable environment. But to be able to do that after after a year and some months, taking off any sort of competition and then hit that in competition, that's big time. And then a 3-pound PR as well. Wow. But here's the thing, you know, when when you know when people think about programming for athletes, there's so many different styles out there of programming. There's, when you're leading up into a competition, that's one type of program. When you're in off season, that's another type of program. When you're in preseason, that's another type of program. When I'm leading up into a qualifier, that's another type of program. What people don't know is that with Emma, after Wadapalooza 2019, we decided right then and there that, the teenage division is not what we're striving for anymore. And she was 15 years old at that time. And so I didn't program for her to get good at the Open. I programmed for her to get good at the games at that point in time.
Wow.
And then when we heard about quarterfinals and semifinals as well, I programmed for quarterfinal, semifinal work, which if you can think about, this is a very simple way of doing it. If you just think about what type of movements, what types of skill level, what types of weights are being moved in quarterfinal, semifinals, and then what type of movement, weights, and skills are being used in the Open, that is how we determine what her program will look like. Because, I mean, she's 15, 16, she was 15 years old that year, 2019. I think she finished like 30th in the Open amongst all the women. So why even spend time focusing on the Open? Let's put the next year and a half and get you really good at quarterfinals and get you really good at CrossFit Games. So that's what we did. We didn't waste any time.
That is incredible. And it goes to this narrative about Emma Cary that we found out this year. Dex Hopkins and I were talking about how she said, hey, I'm not going to do the age group qualifier. I'm going to put all the chips in. I'm going to compete with these elite competitors. And if I fail, I don't have a backup plan. There is no going back. No, I'm burning the boats. I'm going all in. Like, where does that mentality, obviously it starts with her, but as a coach, how do you stoke that fire? Because that's incredible. To be that young and have that between the ears, you hate to say it, but that's a freaking champion waiting to stand on a podium. Seriously, it's incredible.
Yeah, it's 100%. She's different. She's not like any other athlete that we've had. And I didn't really recognize that until we had a camp here with a lot of my athletes. And she would be beating these boys by like 2 and 3 minutes, like Dallin, Cole, James, Tudor, like the whole crew. And everyone would be like, what is going on with her? And afterwards, we would have like, some reflection on it with the group. And she's like, I'm just really disappointed I didn't win by more. I feel like I could have gone faster. I'm like, you did, and in my head, I'm thinking to myself, like, you did everything, like, paced it perfectly, no missed reps, nothing. And she wanted more. And it's like, winning to her is not good enough. She wants to make a point every single time. And, I think what she does a really good job with her mentality is, because she has that thought, she has to walk a very fine line where, if she puts too much energy into it, she'll keep herself up all night, but if she didn't have that fire, then she wouldn't be the athlete that she is. So, I can't take that away from her, but I do have to be there as a coach and be like, hey, look, I get it, and keep this thing going, but now let's just move on. Right? Like we got tomorrow. And, when we went over to the Granite Games, I wanted her to face adversity, and I wanted to see how she was going to come out of it. And there was a lot of opportunities that we faced some true adversity, mentally for her. And, she came out of it, and I was super proud of everything that she went through and how she came out and how well she did that weekend.
Speaking of adversity, the final event where she's, I believe at the time, and probably you please correct me if I'm wrong, I believe she's tied for first. So if like she crosses that finish line, before Mal, I think how the points would have shaken out, she would have been first. She goes for that lunge at the very end. That's got to be, unbroken double dumbbell overhead lunge at 50 pounds for the ladies, 70 for the gentlemen. And just like you said, faced some adversity, not just physically, but then mentally, as you could tell what she was doing. She was going for it. She knew, I cross this line, I get the dub. And where everyone else is breaking it up, being, we'll call it conservative, was that something in your game plan going in, or was that something that she just kind of did on her own on the fly?
Yeah. Well, you know, it was after, I think that was event 7. It was after event 6 when I got a text message that I was like, you know, mathematically, she's made it to the games. You know, she has to, you know, just not show up for event 7 and she might not have a chance, right? So it was within that point in time where it was like, okay, let's just see what happens. You know, and this is something that I tell all my athletes. There comes a point in every single event where we're pacing, we're strategizing, you know, to be our absolute best. But there also is a point within every event where you have to be an athlete, and there's sometimes you have to make decisions that may be a little risky. You know, you have to take some risks. And that's what I told her. You know, we had a game plan for the row. We had a game plan for the next part. We had a game plan for the next part. And I said, look, when you get onto this lunge, you're gonna have to listen to your cues, your body's cues, and figure this thing out. And what she told me afterwards was like, you know what, I'm gonna go big. I'm gonna try to do it. You know, and we did talk about. I do believe that if she would have got past that second line and then dropped the dumbbells and came back, she would have, as you saw, plenty of time to rest it out, take a look around, you know, and continue through. But I'm glad that it didn't happen that way. You know, I'm glad that we saw what dumbbell shoulder to overhead was doing to her that weekend. You know, these are very clear things that we can fix for the next month and a half. You know, going into Madison, that if the dumbbells come out, which, you know, high likelihood they do, I'm excited to see what happens, you know, because that whole weekend came and went, and, you know, we saw what we needed to work on, and now we're implementing all those things. So, you know, did I feel terrible for her? Yeah, you know, I could see the frustration, but, you know, I really wouldn't play that weekend out any other way. 17 years old. Yeah. It's like, I want all these things to be happening now at 17, rather than, you know, when it's scary to say, but when she's in her prime, you know, we have all these things figured out. So, you know, that was the plan for that event, and that's just how it ended up. You know,
it was crazy to see. There were quite a few household names there, and I was talking about this with Joey Torres, and really the focus was not on those household names. The focus was on Mal and Emma, and it was so cool to see. I mean, if you just have a set of eyes, you would have seen this. It's the future of the sport, and you alluded to this just a second ago, that, you know, Emma's not even in her prime yet. I mean, it's going to be, and she's doing this to people. It's going to be scary when that day comes. And I'm just curious, obviously I don't, maybe you've been here before, but I mean, there is no roadmap. At least I don't think there is. I mean, Haley Adams was kind of the first person. There is no roadmap of taking someone out of the teenage division that's had success and then taking them all the way into their prime. So in a way, you're kind of a pioneer. And there's that old saying, pioneers get slaughtered and settlers prosper. And I know that's a little adverse and negative, but I'm just curious. I mean, that is a real thing. How do you navigate that as a coach?
Yeah. You know, with the boys, it's a little bit different than it is with the girls. You know, when the boys were coming out of the teenage division, it's the conversation that I sit down with them and say, look, this is the new roadmap. You know, there's a high chance that we don't see this year. You know, maybe we don't see a semifinals this year. You know, you just turned 18 years old. If we look at past, and you kind of mentioned this earlier, is there was a lot of teenagers before, let's say the Dallins of the world, and, you know, the Tudors and the James and the Coles of the world, that came and they did really, really well in their division, and then we just kind of saw them fall off. We just didn't hear them anymore. And I said, look, don't let the next year or year and a half define you as an athlete, because we got a lot of catching up to do, and we're now back in the middle of the pack. And so that's the conversation that I'm having with the boys when they come out. Emma is a little bit different, right? And you also saw this with Haley when Haley was at this point in time a brute athlete as well. Haley was making it to regionals, back to back years. And then she would go to the teen division right from regionals because, she wasn't prepared yet, right? She just hadn't reached that point in her stage to do well enough to make it. But now it's like, to be honest with you, I don't know if it really is a actual roadmap that says, this is what needs to be done, because, I've worked with a handful of really, really good female teen athletes, top 20 in the world, top 30 in the world, and they're not there. Now they may have little pieces where maybe they're as strong, or maybe they're, one thing is really, really well, like gymnastics or something, but they don't have the entire package. And between Emma and Mal, they're showing that they have the entire package, in their own right. They're two completely different athletes. And, I do believe that what you saw and what everyone saw out there at the Granite Games is just the beginning.
Agreed.
There was a lot of really cool moments where we were looking back at the film, and to see some of the other women look at some of the things that they were doing, some of the other athletes that were competing, and almost like in awe of what they were doing. It was, to me, it was a very special moment just to witness that.
It's so cool because there seems like, just from talking to you, there's this like symbiotic relationship between you as the coach and Emma's athlete, or Dallin or Tudor or any of these gentlemen that you've named. I'm just curious, what have you, because obviously these athletes have learned a lot from you. What have you learned from your athletes?
Really, the biggest thing is teenagers, man. They're resilient. There's a lot of things that that I have conversations with them as they start to age up. Of if you can be resilience, and I would say consistency is another one. Resilient in that they're dealing with their body changes at this time. They're dealing with they're mentally tough to say, I'm in high school, but these are my priorities, and their priority is to win. And part of winning, maybe it's like, not having sleepovers, not going to sometimes proms, or not competing in other sports, and having to make those decisions. And that's probably one of the things where I'm like, okay, like I totally respect where these guys are coming from, because I've been in their shoes before as well, growing up as an athlete. And the consistency, when that fire is burning, the consistency is just like, that is one of the biggest things that, if anyone could take something away, is if you're just consistent with something, you're going to do better, right? If you just show up to work every single day, you're gonna be an okay, at the very least, employee. If you just do the work that's written for you, you're gonna be an okay athlete. And that's just the beginning, is just show up and just do the work. And that's one thing that I really started to notice. I was like, man, how come this athlete is doing better than this athlete, and how come this one's excelling more than that one? It's like, oh, I see that this one's a little bit more consistent. This one is completing 95% of the workouts that I program, and this other one's completing 70% of the workout that's programmed. This one is not questioning as much, and is doing, and this one is questioning and replacing. So there's a lot to learn from a lot of these athletes, and it's not just the teenagers that I work with. It's the other, the masters athletes that I have. It's the other games individual athletes that I have. taught me something, and usually it's within that alley of, consistency and resiliency.
I didn't realize. I was looking at the slate. Speaking of all the athletes you have, I was looking at the slate of athletes you have. I mean, you have a wide breadth of athletes. I mean, like you said, from the teenagers to the games athletes in their prime, and then the masters athletes. It's really impressive. For you, is there? I mean, from like a coaching flow, is there different parts of your brain that you kind of have to turn off? You're like, okay, now I've got the masters, now I've got the teens. I mean, what does that workflow look like for you? Because, and we'll get into this in a minute, I know you're part of a gym, own a gym down in Florida, and I'm just curious, what does balance look like for you? What does priorities look like for you? What does focus look like for you?
Yeah. So specifically when programming for these athletes,
Yeah,
is that kind
absolutely.
of what you're thinking? Um, with masters athletes, my mind is typically this. I got to get them to the starting line. You know, like goal number one, they got to be there,
Mm.
injury free. Uh, and, for the most part, and we all know as CrossFit has developed over time, what people were doing 10 years ago, 8 years ago, 6 years ago, 3 years ago, is much different than what people are doing now. And what I really like about this sport is we're treating it like any other sport. There's an off season, there's a postseason, there's a
Hmm.
preseason. Like that's how it is now. Um, and for a masters athlete, it's no different. And so sometimes with masters athletes, getting them to realize like we don't have to
Mm.
go hard all the time is like that's one mindset that I have to get them to develop. Um, and then with my other individual athletes like Jason and Zeke, they've been there before. They know exactly what it looks like. Now they come from two completely different
Hmm.
programming mindsets. Where Jason came from more of like a typical like constantly varied type program that did really well for him and got him to the games and got him to regionals multiple times. And Zeke came from a coach that was local and got him to the games, got him to regionals a lot. And then it was like, okay, this is
Mm.
how I do it, right? And these are some things that I like to hear from my athletes that just comes out naturally. It's like my body's never felt better. My energy's never felt
Mm.
better. I feel more prepared. I feel more
Mm.
willing to keep on going. Because look, every single athlete goes through the same thing, and this is what I mean is they get super hyped in the beginning of a season, or they get super hyped after coming off their rest, and mid-season they're like, dude, I'm just questioning everything right now. I have so much stress going on in my life. Like, there's a lot going on, and to me, it's like, all right, let's just adjust the program a little bit. You know, you have a newborn, like, your workouts are going to be an hour long, if that. Let's just get you in, and let's just check that
Mm.
box. I did today's workout. Boom. That's all I really care about. And so managing those individuals is a little bit different than managing the masters. And then managing the teens is like that's a whole nother thing where they're just so excited and all they want to do is lift all the time and all they want to do is work out all the time and they want 4, 5, 6 sessions. And it's like I get text messages all the time. It's like, are we only doing 2 sessions today? Are we only doing one session today? And it's like it's like, yeah, this is it. Like one, like that's all you get. Like go home and eat and then sleep a little bit. Um, and here's one really cool thing. I learned this part in college when I was playing football. It's like you'll have athletes that they're
Mm.
they're their own fire. They don't need a special talk from me. They don't need me to motivate them. It's like a horse. It's like uh, you would rather say like whoa, right? Like pull back on the reins. I'd rather have that type of athlete than one I have to say go. Like we got to go. We got to get going. Like I need you to
Mm.
to be pushing it a little bit more. And sometimes I have to instill that inside of my athletes is I need you to go so fast that you
Mm.
will probably fail. and you may fail in front of all of these eyes and all of these people. But that's the type of like, that's what we need specifically for this workout. And there are athletes that I've had that are top notch athletes, that I had to get that back into them to say, okay, this is an all out sprint, and I'm not gonna pace this. I'm not gonna strategize this too much. I just have to go, and I have to let the wheels fall off. And here's the thing, as a coach, I really want the wheels to fall off
Sure.
in training. If that's the type of stimulus, if that's the type of adaptation I'm trying to create, I need that to happen in training. So I know what their limitations are when they get into a competition.
Failure is something that everybody faces, no matter if you work an 8 to 5, if you do CrossFit, if it doesn't matter. Failure is a reality of life, and it manifests itself, I think, differently depending upon the context in which you are in. But nevertheless, it's like the struggle is still the same. As humans, we still struggle with failure, whether it's the perception of what other people are going to think about the failure, or if it's our own insecurity of the failure, or maybe a combination thereof. I'm curious for you as a coach, and obviously as a human too, just someone that, people look at, sometimes these coaches is like, you have all the answers. It's like, hey, they're figuring it out too. How do you navigate that with your athletes? Because it's a real thing.
Yeah. You're right. It takes many different shapes and forms. Everyone's perception of failure is a little bit different, as you mentioned. Um, so because of that, there's a lot more variables when thinking of what is the right words to say to my
Hmm.
athlete at this time in this moment. What's something that I know will start to bring them up a little bit. Because there's failure brings doubt, and sometimes you get a lot of doubt in training, or in the heat of the moment, if an event doesn't go the way it's meant to go, that doubt can creep up. It can really eat at you for the remaining portion of the weekend. But I'll tell you what, when I talk to my athletes, the way I do it is to give them some parallels with other major
Mm.
athletes that do very well, that face failure frequently, and it's really easy for me to really fall back onto football, because in essence, when you're in on game day, you have to be
Yeah.
well equipped with short term memory, and this is something that I really learned is when if an event goes catastrophic, or whatever word that athlete may use, uh don't avoid those feelings of failure. Like, failure comes with a lot of feelings. Don't avoid them. Let them come in. Think about it, consider it, and once they've gone through, at that point in time, we're not going to look at any of the things that went wrong in this moment. We're not going to dissect anything
Hmm.
yet, because that's what we're going to do after this workout. I mean, after the competition, we're going to look at everything, and we'll talk about all the things that I saw, or all the things that you saw, and we're going to fix it. But what we need to do is, like, let's say a Tom Brady, that is down by 3 touchdowns in one of the biggest games of his life. He needs to have short-term memory. He needs to be
Hmm.
focused on what the next play is. And for a lot of these athletes, it's the same thing. Is once you forgot about this, we're thinking about the next event. And what I typically do is to try to get them back up to, like,
Hmm.
feeling good about themselves and confidence, feeling good again, is uh, visualizing what the next event and
That's good.
imagery of what the next event is going to be. You know, so they're living back in the now, and their feet are not
Right.
in the past of what just happened. So yeah, so I like to draw two things, the parallels with other sports, and if there's something that's happened in CrossFit, or if I know that they're, big time CrossFit fanatics, or, I'll usually try to find something from history of CrossFit. And then number two is, like,
Mm.
they can't do anything about it anymore. And so let's start to, and it's not as simple as let's just think ahead. No, I have to give them things to actually think about when it comes to, this is how you're going to think ahead. What's it going to look like? What's it going to sound like? What's
Mm.
it going to, smell like when you're out there? How many steps are you going to be taking from this to that? How quickly are you going to like get in and get on the rings? So on and so forth. And that's kind of the path that I'll take when these athletes start to, you know, hit a roadblock, whether it's in training or whether it's in at the games or
Wow,
at a competition.
it's it's really, really cool when, you know, coaches can come in, and I think really it's just my just personal opinion of having a coach myself and then coaching other people. It's what coaches really do is they help you see what you can't see on your own, you know? I mean, obviously the programming is a given, but it's what I find to be most helpful is helping you visualize, helping you, as you said, see and realize something about yourself that by yourself you just can't push past. I mean, you can't push into, because, you know, whether you're into visualizations or you're not into visualization, it really doesn't matter. I think seeing yourself as someone that can achieve XYZ is a critical component of achieving XYZ. I'll say it this way. If you don't believe you can achieve XYZ, you're going to have a harder time achieving that thing than the person that does believe that.
Hmm. Yeah. And you know what? Mentally, I think it's huge, right? So when an athlete doesn't do as well as they expected on an event, they begin to doubt and they begin to question everything. And so you're right. It's part of our job as coaches to help them believe again, because that's what's going to help them, you know, be at the podium at the end of the week. And we all, as coaches, we all get it. One event is not going to break the entire weekend, you know. And so it's kind of like, look, it's fine. Let's not judge ourselves by this one event. At the end of the weekend, we'll look back and we'll judge to see where we're at. You know, but that's how it is helping them believe. And it's not, the programming is the programming, the strategizing is what it is. The preparation for each and every single event, it is what it is, which, by the way, it's amazing to me that the where this sport is right now, that some of these athletes do not have the know-how or maybe the understanding of how serious each event is and the approach of every single event. And I don't know if it's from my background as a football player and approaching every single week with so much finite detail that, you know, it just puts us above the rest. When I see what athletes are doing as they're preparing for each event, or I see what athletes are doing post-event, it's like, you know what, just keep on doing that, you know, because I know what we're doing and I know that it's working. But yeah, side topic on that. But, you know, as a coach, yeah, we have to help athletes see what they cannot see sometimes.
I love that you just brought this up. We'll call it the process, or as Nick Saban says, the process, to use a football analogy. I think, obviously, you know, there are certain things there, right, that we know that, hey, if you do this thing, you're going to set yourself up for success. And the process, how do you get athletes to buy into this process when prior to them winning, because winning, man, it pays to be a winner, does it not? I mean, because you can get anyone to buy in if you're almost anyone to buy in if you're winning. I'm sure, you know, someone coming down to Tuscaloosa playing for Nick Saban and he's got, you know, 18 national championships. I'm sure it's not really that hard to be like, you're going to either do this, you're not going to be on the team. Like, we have a proven method here. But when you haven't won 18 championships yet, how do you get athletes to buy into what you just said, the process?
Yeah. You know, it's a lot of, it's, you know, if I'm working with an athlete for an extended period of time, and they see progress, they start to build trust. You know, and now here's the thing is when we're working together, there's a lot of things that I implement that these athletes have not done before.
Interesting.
And so, you know, when they're And I'm always an open book. If you want to ask me why I'm doing things, I'm more than happy to explain. I feel like every coach should be
Agreed.
able to do that. There's a reason for everything that I put on, your program. There's a reason for every day that we're resting. There's a reason for all of it. So if you'd like to ask me those questions, do it. And I think it's within that time where it's like, okay, all right, I see it. Like, I get it. I get what we're doing. It's like, I've never felt so good going into a competition with the amount of
Hmm.
energy that I have and the way my body is feeling going into a competition. So once we've gone through that like journey right there, and usually that takes about like maybe 8 months or more, I would say, because there's a lot of new things that, again, and some of these athletes just never have experience before that. When it comes
Hmm.
to game day, uh, again, we're having the conversations before saying this is what it's going to look like on game day. You're going to be showing up in the warm up area at this time. You're going to be doing a 45-minute warm up before you get corralled. When we're doing our practice and our testing, you're going to get warmed up and you're going to stand
Hmm.
around for 20 minutes because that's exactly what's
Hmm.
about to happen on game day. And so when it comes to game time, there's organization, right? Because it's so that there's no chaos, and there's trust now because it's like, okay, my coach, he has his shit together and he has everything down. And so on game day, there's already that trust built. So when it comes time for us to say, all right, are we going to go? I forgot what it was with Emma, the rep scheme on one of them.
Hmm.
Oh, on snatch. For the snatch workout, we had two options. And Granny Games switched up the
Hmm.
style of the event number
Hmm.
one, the snatch event, like the day before. And so we had a game plan already. And we were thinking, do we go open up with 185 or do we open up with 195? Or excuse me, 190, 185 or 190. It's only 5 pounds, but it's like, which one is it going to be? And it was at that point in time, and I was telling, one of the dudes I was with, I said, look, what happens back here in the warm up area is super vital because I'm about to make the decision before she goes out of whether we're open up with 185
Hmm.
or 190 because I got to see the confidence in her eyes. And it's the trust that was built up until that point that allowed me to say, all right, we're gonna open up with 185. And she didn't question it. She said, okay, we're open up with 185. And boom, and she was out. And that can't be developed you can't shorten
Hmm.
that process down. That's developed over time. We've been working together for over a year and a half. And that's how it was developed going into that moment where she's like, okay, I'm not going to question it. 185 is what it is. And again, it happened out on the floor when she hit 185, she hit 195, and she was hyped. And she was like, 205, 205. And I was like, nope, 200. And she was like, all right, 200 is what it is. Boom, boom. And she didn't question it. It's like she just put it on and then she went. And that's just how it is, if I had an athlete that I've only been working with for 4 or 5 months, and they just decided to work with me because they heard of the how well my athletes have done previous. I don't think I'd be able to get that same type of confidence
Yeah.
in a coach where I'm like, no, 200. They're like, no, 205. So it's just developed over time.
Wow, it's so cool hearing these stories and really seeing the I don't know, almost the drape pulled back on not only these athletes but then the processes, because you know behind every championship team, behind every championship drive, whether it's Tom Brady or Nick Saban or Emma Cary or whomever, there's a process. There's this is how we do things, and it's different for every person. But no one, just like you said, no one just wins just by showing up and getting there. Granted, you have to show up, but like you said, there's a certain level where you can maybe do that in high school, but then you get to college and you get to NFL, and then eventually everybody's good. Everybody runs 4.2s, whatever. Everybody jumps really high. Everybody lifts really heavy. Now, lifting heavy, being fit, being fast isn't enough. And that's what we're seeing in the sport of CrossFit now. Being fast, lifting heavy is not enough. And that is fascinating. I mean, do you
Yeah.
think that this is really the future? I mean, do you think that kind of the old guard, I don't know if that's the right word, but that maybe the way things have been is just not going to cut it anymore? It's like if you're not getting into this at 15 or 16, you probably just don't have the chance.
100%. Like any other sport, it's exactly what it's going to be developing into. Is, you know, imagine trying to pick up basketball at the age of 18 and expecting to, receive a scholarship. It just what the likelihood is extremely slim. It's no different. And I have athletes, they'll reach out to me and they'll be like, "Hey, I want you to be my coach. This is like, I came from a triathlon background and, I have, all these numbers and everything." And it's then and there. And they go, this is my last chance in the teenage division. And this is what I want to do. And it's my job to be like, "Look, great job outside of the CrossFit realm. Excellent leading up to this point. And I love that you have this attitude of wanting to win. I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and I just got to know, what your numbers are. And I'm going to give you a realistic idea of where the numbers are for these other athletes that are placing top 20 in the world. And I'll let you know just about how long it'll take you to get there." Again, possibly. Now, everyone's a little bit different. And typically by the end of those conversations, it's like, "Look, the teen division is not going to happen for you this year. The pro division is not going to happen for you 2 years from now. It's not going to happen for you 3 years from now. You're 18. I think by the time you're 21, 22, I think you could do it. But I also know that remote programming is not the way it's going to be done, because you're going to need a coach to have eyes on you." And that's just the realistic conversation that I have. These kids, they've been doing it since they were 12, 13, and 14 years old. Honestly, this is the most amazing thing in the world. The last 2 years, or, not last, but 2 years before that in Madison, when you walk into the warm-up area, it splits off, and it's like the teens platforms and, the games platforms, the individual platforms are usually split. But when you look down, you're like, I can't tell if these teenagers are Olympic lifters. I can't tell if they're, triathletes. I can't tell. They're amazing at everything. And then you look at like the games competitors, they still have some habits that they're still trying to work through. Maybe it's tight hips, or maybe it's tight this, or maybe it's like a bad that. And you can see it in their movement. And it's like, these teenagers are absolutely incredible. From 1 to number 20, what they do is absolutely amazing. And that's what we're getting. And that's what we just saw at Granite Games, is we saw it in action when someone has a great coach. Mal's coach is a great coach, and we can see it in her movement, and we can see it in her the results. So this is what happens. And the path is always going to be a little bit different for all these teenagers or all these athletes that come in. But it's just like any other sport. The younger you start, the more developed you're going to be, the more ahead of the game you're going to be. And I'll tell you what, I'm excited for Emma and whatever happens this weekend with the boys this weekend. If we get another one into the games, if we get 2 or 3 more into the games, that'd be absolutely amazing. But I'm excited for Emma, because this is all we know right now, to see how she does when she's going up against the women that she looked up to for so many years. The girls that, she would be a fangirl over, because they're going to look at Emma like blood in the water, like out on the floor. I don't respect anybody. I'm cold-blooded. There's nothing in the world that will stop me from putting my foot on your throat. If that's what it takes to win. Right. And the moment that the competition is done, then we can be, humans again. And, we can enjoy each other's company. But that's the type of mentality that I want for my athletes, that I think CrossFit is actually losing. And I get it because we're a community, we want to have, we want to help each other out. We want people to be pushed a certain way, but I'll be damned if, someone, and this is just how I grew up, rarely ever do I score a touchdown and then high five the defender is like, dude, you did really well on that play. Like, keep it up, man. You're doing amazing. No, I look at them and like, that's only one. You're getting more,
Yeah.
and that's just how it is because I got to win up here against these athletes. And my athletes, that's what we try to develop is a killer instinct in all of them. And I really love the way Adrian Conway, his thought process and his mental side, it aligns so well. So when we were working together, a couple years back, and when we're at the games together and we're with athletes, like that is what like I love to see, and that's what I want to have out of these CrossFit athletes. Is it cool that they want to have a fun time and they want to cheer on people and whatnot? Yeah, that's cool. But I'll tell you what, Fraser, that dude doesn't win events and go like hang around and goes and cheers people on. That he walks right off. He's like, I did my job. This is exactly what I came to do. I didn't come here to make people feel comfortable about me beating them. And that's something that, again, side note, that we need more of in this sport.
Yeah.
Make it more exciting.
I'm not coming here to be friends. I'm coming here to win, get a paycheck, and develop a legacy. It's that. I mean, just like you said. I mean, you don't see football play. That's a great analogy. Going and high fiving some defenders after they just mossed over them. Like, come on, man, that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Well, okay. As we wrap up, dude, this is like we're 52 minutes in, and I don't even know where the time has gone. This has been one of the most seamlessly amazing conversations. So thank you for that. Holy cow, this is gold. Seriously, I really appreciate it. Just a couple things that I saw on your Instagram that I want to touch on really quick, and then I'll give you the opportunity if you want to add anything at the end. So I saw that you use the Eisenhower Matrix to decide what's most important to you. Can you just briefly explain why you use that, and then also for those that don't know, maybe how it works?
Yeah. So basically, it's about priorities, and when it comes to work, priorities, we all are in the same boat. It's like the list of things that need to get done, it never shortens, and so if you have a big list of things and you're looking at it and you're doing what you want to do and not what needs to be done, you may not feel at the end of the day like you got anything accomplished. And that was one of the reasons why I started doing it. Was I would have so many things done, but at the end of the night, I was like, man, I just feel like I didn't do anything. So what ended up happening was I said, for me, the number one that's most important is, what's going to be the biggest ROI for me, or the quickest ROI, right? And that's typically what's going to get me paid first. That goes in that top left box. And from there, it's, what's going to get me paid first, and then what time restraint goes into the next box. And I forget what the boxes are off of what each quadrant is, but it's usually like what's most important and what has a time restraint. And the next one is what doesn't have a time restraint, but still has to get done. So it's something that maybe that needs to get done in a week. I have a week to do it. So maybe that's not something that I need to get done today. And then that last one is, what are things that I can get off of my plate that I can either, give to other people, whether it's an employee or whether I'm giving it to a third party. And what are things that I just don't need to do, right? At that point in time, maybe it was something that I thought was very important that needed to get done. And over a short period of time, I was like, oh, I don't really need this at all. It's like, let me just get rid of that. Whether I'm just like tossing it to the side, giving it to somebody else, something to speed up that process. And I'll tell you what, for for a lot of athletes, this is super, super important. Because as an athlete growing up, all I really knew was just do my sport. When I was in college, it was a great time in college, but everything was done for me. So priorities in my brain, prioritizing was something that I really didn't have to put much consideration in, because I would go to my counselor and she would say, all right, these are the classes you're taking. These are the times you need to be there. And these are where your books are going to be picked up. And then when I go into the football meeting, this is the time you need to go to practice. This is the food that you're going to be eating. This is when we're breaking down game film. And so for me, it was just on a sheet of paper, and I just had to get it done and be there. So by the time I got out of college and into the real world, it was very difficult for me to find what is most important. And that Eisenhower Matrix helps me stay on task with what is most important.
Is that something that you use with your athletes, or do you? I mean, it may not be that exact matrix, but is that something that you try to instill in them? Because for professional athletes, there's really not. You can kind of do what you want to a degree, right? And then it shows up on game day.
Yeah, not necessarily, because I'm that person for my athletes when they need, as far as like where they need to be, at what time they need to be there, and what they need to be prepared for. Now, if my athletes were asking me more stuff about business, that would probably be it, because right now, the majority, but not all of them. I do have athletes that are coaches and gym owners. And what's most important to them is family, business, and then training, and then for the teenagers, what's most important for them is training.
Yeah.
It's like school will get it done. And I don't know what it is about my athletes, but they're all very bright individuals, like very, very bright individuals. And it's like, I don't really, there's not really a necessity for that matrix to play a role quite yet. Now, this is a conversation that I have, and I had it with Dallin first. I said, look, dude, from here, he was the first one that just so happened to make the conversation. I said, from the teenage division, you're going to the pro division now. Now you have to make the choice. Is this like, do you foresee yourself being a professional athlete? Because, there's going to be a point in time where you're going to have to speak with an agent. There's going to be a point in time where money is going to be very important. And it's not just about going out and having fun anymore and getting the accolades. And now the dude's married. And it's like, look how quickly that changed from 17, 18 years old to where he's at now. Now it's like, there's a common understanding that as a CrossFit athlete, if this is the sport you want to do, there's certain roles that have to be played. So maybe for him, maybe that is a conversation that him and I need to have now is, these are the priorities. But, here's another cool thing is, in 2022, my athletes will be moving down to Naples to come train with me in person. And it's just, again, it's the way the sport is being, developed. This is what needs to happen. We need to have these athletes around me, around their coach at all times to help develop them in the way that will help them out the most.
So you think what we're seeing, obviously CrossFit Mayhem started it first, then you saw the group at CrossFit New England with Bergeron and Katrin and all of them kind of do their thing. So you think that that's kind of that's the way of the sport now?
100%. It's amazing to me that these athletes have developed the way that they did, working out by themselves. Now, when they come into my town and they come into the gym this next year, and they're around the same type of thought, same type of mindset, people with similarities to the way they think, the way they train. I don't know what type of animals are about to be created, but I know that these teams right now that are like leading the way and showing the way, it's like I don't think people realize what it's about to be, what the sport is about to be within the next like 2 or 3 years, and how much potential these teenagers have. And I'll tell you what, there's I tell each of my boys this, the teenagers, is they're all
Hmm.
different. They all have strengths in different categories. So when they compete against each other, it's always like this. It's like, oh, Tudor's going to win this one. So let me try to fight against this one. Or it's like, all right, Dallin has this one. Oh, it's this type of
Hmm.
workout. Cole has that one. And it's like, ah, man, James. And it's like, that's what I
Yeah.
need around each other. I need Dallin to be as aerobically fit as James. I need James to be as strong as Dallin. I need the other three to have just as good as
Hmm.
gymnastics as Tudor. I need the other three to be just as you know willing to let the
Hmm.
wheels fall off as Cole. So it's like it's the perfect combination. And then you bring in Emma, and she's just like, "All right, just watch what I do." Like I don't know what you boys are doing over there, but I'm in my own like separate like universe, and everyone's just like from afar just watching her. And so I think it'll be amazing just to have all of them down, uh, and year round have just keep them together. If they keep them together, they're going to do really really
So
well.
when I assume when you bring them down, I mean, are you going to adopt the model of like, hey, kind of like you were talking about, with football, with college football, it's like, hey, you're going to be here at a certain time. You're going to get your body work at a certain time. This is for the most part kind of what we're going to eat. This is all those good things.
100%, 100%. And I'm lucky enough to live
Yes,
in
you are.
Florida, and it's sunny
Yes,
year
you are.
round. So it's like there is never going to be a moment where we can't access water. There's never going to be a moment where we can't be outside running. There's never going to be a moment, uh, you know, yeah, we may not have hills or mountains or whatever. It doesn't matter. If we need to go do that, we just go travel out. But yeah, that's exactly how it's going to be, and it shouldn't. I hope it's different elsewhere because I
Mm.
know that's going to put us ahead of the game. Um, you know, but there's going to be a time that they have to be and they have to show up and be professional when they're in there and get things done in a timely manner. And I realize that they have a million other things going on in their life, and this is the way it's going to be. It's like the if you have um, things
Hmm.
listed out throughout the day, tracked in calendar, you
Hmm.
can put in free time. You just have to put it in your calendar when you have free time. Uh, but that's just how things will be ran. And these teens, they I know that they're absolutely gonna love it. If this is the time we all got to be in
Agreed.
there,
Yeah.
they're gonna be hyped every single day to be in there. So, you know,
Well, look, man, I want to obviously respect your time because I'm incredibly grateful for it. And I know that folks listening, again, are super grateful because of what they've been able to get out of this. And whether it's mindset or some of the training philosophies you spoke about earlier. I'm just curious, are you, for those maybe listening, are you accepting new clients at this point?
no, unfortunately, I'm not.
Okay. All right. Well, if they, then I'll ask this on their behalf. If they are interested in simply connecting with you, where can they connect with
Yeah.
you?
Well, first off, at Brute, we have a lot of amazing coaches. So even though I'm not accepting any more athletes, we meet on a weekly basis as like our own think tank to bounce ideas off of
Hmm.
one another. So, we all have our own uniqueness to us, but there is a
Hmm.
lot of similarities as well. So we do have a lot of amazing coaches. And you can reach out to, you can visit the Brute website to have a
Hmm.
conversation with a coach, right? A free conversation essentially. Now they're going to ask you to be their athlete by the end of it, but the conversation is free. Um, I'm always open because at at my deepest core, I like to tinker with things. I like problem solving. So
Hmm.
if there's a question that anybody ever has, that's just who I am. I like to solve the problem that's in front of me. But they can reach out to me. Typically, Instagram's going to be the best way to go about doing it. And actually, I recently changed my Instagram name, and so now I think it's like underscore Matt period Torres underscore. I would, nothing fills my cup more than feeling like I helped somebody. So, if anyone ever has a question about whatever fitness or mindset or business related, and I can help, assist them with that answer, I'd be happy to do so.
Yeah, we didn't even get into the business side of things. We're going to have to come back for part 2. Matt owns a very successful gym in Naples, Florida, where he lives, and I mean, we touched on the mindset from an athlete perspective, but there's still so much. It's just the tip of the iceberg. So this is going to be a conversation to be continued. So, anyways, before we jump off here, is there anything that you would like to add to our conversation before we jump off?
No, man. It was a pleasure being able to chat with you, Micah. And, I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to, open up and share with people, my thoughts on coaching and my thoughts on programming and the competition. And, I look forward to seeing you. Hopefully you're going to be out in Madison in a month and a half.
Yeah.
Perfect. So I look forward to seeing you out there too, brother.
Yeah, man. And then when y'all all get all these fit people really down in Naples, I'll come be the test dummy. I can just mess things up for you and create some problems.
For sure. Just be an obstacle in the way for them.
Exactly. Look, I can do that. I can be a pain in the ass. So that's for sure. Well, thank you so much for your time. Thank all of you for listening. As always, we sincerely appreciate it. You can connect with Matt on Instagram. His link will be in the bio, so you can click on that. And if you are interested, like he said, talking with a Brute coach, we will have that link too. Again, it is free. They will ask you to be their athlete at the end, but the 45-minute conversation about your strengths, weaknesses, and how you can get better is truly completely free. There's no salespeople. It's just a coach like Matt talking to you. And Brute has quite an array of great coaches. Well, thank you so much for listening. Matt, thank you. Love you, bro. And we'll talk real soon, man.
Yeah, man. Take care.
Thanks.